Good morning, Mata Nui! Welcome back to another episode of the Barraki Talk Show. We're your hosts, the Mielik brothers,
Jacob,
Samuel,
Thomas, and we're glad you're joining us today as we talk our way through the weird and wondrous world of Bionicle. But first, coming up on the Barraki Talk Show. Give a man a battery for a day, he'll stay charged for a day. Teach him to strip copper wires and he'll be charged for a lifetime. They're like, any Matoran who would build a vehicle out of the desecrated corpse of their enemy deserves 3 colors.
And so it's like, hey, kids are gonna buy Happy Meals, kids are gonna get these toys, and they're gonna say, what is this? This is kind of cool. I want to know more about that. And so it's actually super smart. I think if that was their tactic, was to just get it everywhere, do it in every form of media that they could get their hands on, then it's like, yeah, why not?
All that and more coming up on the Barraki Talk Show. Welcome back to another episode of the Barraki Talk Show. Before we move on to the main meat of our episode, there are a few corrections that must be made. On the Borak episode, all of the Borak, not just the Va, were repurposed to repair the villages. Last time I stated that the Borak Va were there to repair the villages. Turns out the entire Borak swarms were repurposed to help build stuff again, which is very interesting. Also, on a pertinent note, Tahu was briefly possessed by a Krona while he was in the Borak caves. However, he got it off in time, so he wasn't assimilated, but he never told anyone, not even Lua. And he will keep that secret pretty much for the rest of his life, as far as I know. So, we will now move on to the main topic of today's episode, which is the Matoran, who the Matoran universe were named after. That is because they are the most plentiful and numerous species in the Matoran universe, and they're kind of like the bedrock to compare everything else to. Samuel, what can you tell us about the Matoran?
The Matoran are the workers of the world. They are what make it function, essentially. They're the ones who get in all the trouble, too. For some reason, everybody is bent on either destroying or saving the Matoran. So it's kind of interesting, I guess.
There's no neutral feelings about the Matoran.
Yeah. So besides that, I don't know much. Like, they have they have elements that they are, I don't know what you would say, like they belong affiliated. Yeah, that's a good word. But beyond that, I don't know much about them.
So Matoran are like pretty much every inhabitant of the Matoran universe. They're biomechanical in nature, right? They stand around 4.5 feet tall. And that's what they base their measurement off of. It's called a bio, right? It was the standard height of a Matoran.
which is really funny because if you look at the Matoran sets, none of them are standard height in any way, shape, or form.
Well, there's actually lore reasons for that, which we will get into. For some of them, at least.
For some of them.
Anyway, so they're biomechanical beings, and this means they are incredibly strong and resilient by human standards. Like, if a Matoran and a human were to fight, it wouldn't even be close. It'd be like trying to fight a car. They can lift a boulder over their head and smash it into rubble, if need be. And if they're a Matoran or an Onu Matoran.
Or Pohatu.
Yeah, Pohatu's not a Matoran, you idiot.
Yeah, but he does like smashing boulders.
Well, yeah, he's the Toa of boulders.
That's his official name.
Yeah, Toa of boulders. So, Matoran are interesting because when they're created, they don't have to learn anything. They're created with all basic knowledge and technical skills that they need to begin working right away. Like, they're born and like, go to the mines, boy. Pickaxe. It's very immediate.
Like villagers in Age of Empires.
I was going to say Minecraft, but yeah, that too. They all generally worship the Great Spirit Mata Nui and follow the 3 virtues, unity, duty, and destiny. And that's what the Toa and Turaga also follow. It's like the guiding principle. If destined, Matoran can turn into Toa, and if destined, a Toa can give up their Toa power and become a Turaga. This is all considered part of the Matoran species. Like Toa and Turaga are technically considered part of the Matoran species, which is interesting because it doesn't seem like it would work like that because there's no way for a Toa to go back to being a Matoran. So it's like...
Can you go back to being a child?
No, what? Jesus would say yes.
Go back in the womb and then we'll see where your argument
I stand corrected, okay? They also didn't eat they don't eat food like normal people. So they can directly recharge at a power plant, like just stick them next to a high voltage cable, boom, they're fed for a week, right? Give a man a battery for a day, he'll stay charged for a day. Teach him to strip copper wires and he'll be charged for a lifetime. I guess would be. No, that's not how that
Which
works.
really it is real interesting when you start talking about Matoran of electricity.
We'll get to that. Okay. So, but that's not all. They don't just feed off of pure energy. They can also absorb energy from food through their hands. So they just touch like a fruit, boom, they eat it. They can also absorb it from organic, like purely organic life. So for example, like the fish around Mata Nui are purely organic many times. They can just like take those, fry them up, absorb the energy, which is creepy.
Wait, they have to fry the fish to then absorb it?
Oh yeah,
Can they
better nutrients? They could probably eat them
taste
raw
it?
as well.
Yeah.
So they can't actually
Give it to
taste.
us raw and wriggling. That's
Yeah, they can't actually taste, but they can eat through their mouths. But they consider it barbaric because if you can eat through your hands, why would you eat through your mouth?
It seems crazy to me,
Yeah,
right?
Also, totally random thing, but it is confirmed by word of Greg. They have eyelids.
Why?
I don't know what to do with this information at all. Also, they don't have traditional, they don't have like human-like anatomy in most things. Instead of a heart, they have what's called a heart light, which is essentially just like an energy chamber that energy goes in and out of, and that's where all the energy they go from charging or whatever goes into. The Matoran species have a weird thing where they can combine into multiple things. Fusion, essentially. Many things from Bionicle can do it, like the Barraki can. They can turn into the Combiner. The Toa can, they can turn into Kaida. But Matoran, it takes 6 Matoran of different tribes to form into what's called a Matoran Nui. A Matoran Nui is just like a Toa Kaida, but with 6 Matoran instead. But they don't get access to elemental abilities. They're just really strong, fast, and durable. And it only ever happens once.
To be fair, this looks significantly better than the Borak combiners.
Anything look better than that. One other element that is necessary for their survival/existence is they have to wear a mask pretty much at all times. If they don't have a mask, they'll quickly lose energy, and if they're without it long enough, they will fall into a permanent coma. However, Matoran also have one elemental affiliation, one element per tribe of Matoran. When Matoran are created and they're affiliated with an element, they have a reserve of elemental energy in them, and that's what actually manifests their unique trait. So it's not biological in any way. So for example, the Gamatoran don't actually have bigger lungs than anyone else. It is their elemental power that is granting them additional lung capacity, which is weird. Because like Tomatoran and Komatoran don't have fire or ice resistance without their elemental energy. So if you manage to strip a Matoran of their elemental energy, they would just have no specific trait.
Are there any Matoran with no specific traits? Like, other than those that have been stripped, are they all assigned some sort of element from creation?
Yes. They all have an element. And it can change if they become like a Shadow Matoran later on, but that's the only thing we know. So when they turn into a Toa, they're unlocking more of their elemental reserve and access to it. Right?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where the continuity between Matoran, Toa, and Turaga goes, because they just gain or lose access to their elemental trait.
Which would explain why, for example, a Tomatoran becomes a Toa of fire, a Gamatoran becomes a Toa of water, etc., and not like a Tomatoran becomes like a Toa of earth or something.
Yeah, exactly, because since they're part of the same species, it's the same soul and continuity transferring over. Now, we get into the specific elemental affinities and what they do for Matoran. So I will have you guys guess when I mention the Matoran and their element, what that specific power manifests for them. The first one will be some gimmies. Matoran, what do you think their power is?
Definitely ice resistance.
Oh, I was going to say water resistance.
Air resistance, you idiots.
Like an airplane?
Yes. They're very aerodynamic. No, they have heat resistance. obviously. Not enough to like withstand lava or anything. If they can't stand in lava, like they'll burn up and die. They can stand being near lava. Now, we also get to the notable Matoran of each tribe as we'll go through the traits. So, on Mata Nui, there are 2 notable Matoran. First being Jalar, who is known as Jala at the time. He's the head of the Takoro Guard. He's friends with Holly, the Matoran, and he's Vakama's right hand, Turaga Vakama. And he will be very important later, probably.
Much like Hafu. Yeah, Hafu.
Oh yeah, just like Hafu, he'll be super important later. The other important Matoran is Takua, who is the chronicler, which means he goes around and he writes down all the stuff that the Toa do, and he gets into misadventures and fights stuff while doing that because Toa go to dangerous places.
And he's also good friends with Jalar.
Yeah, he's like best friends with Jalar. And he was actually the one to activate the Toa stones that brought the canisters to Mata Nui. So he went on a whole series of adventures and had to get him out of a volcano, bring him to the Turaga. Then when it was activated, the canisters got brought in. So without him...
Wait, sorry, really quickly. You're telling me that Takua was the one who brought the canisters there, but it took them 1,000 years to come to the island once they were summoned?
No, they were floating around the island for 1,000 years. Then he was the one that summoned them, converged on the island.
I just kind of assumed they were floating and then eventually made it to the island. They weren't specifically summoned, like, again.
Well,
like
how
that.
else were they all supposed to get there at the same time?
Yeah,
well,
you fool.
I assumed that when they were launched into the sea, that they were had already been summoned and were just lost on the way there. It just took them forever to actually make it to the island, and they were just largely grouped together. But
yeah, so it's not a coincidence. It's just a weird contrivance, essentially.
Gotcha.
Now, Matoran. What do you think their trait is?
Let me guess. Lung capacity.
No, how'd you know? That's the Matoran, Jacob.
Honestly, that would also kind of make sense.
That would also make sense. Anyway, so Matoran, they have increased lung capacity, and they're one of the few tribes of Matoran that are all female. Because all Matoran tribes are either all male or all female. And so Matoran are one of the few all female. Now, this doesn't denote any biological difference between them. It's purely psychological. That's also confirmed fact, by the way, by Gregory himself.
Real quick, when you say Greg, maybe we should mention who we're talking about.
Yeah, my friend Greg. Guy, I know. No, I mean Greg Farshti, writer of Bionicle. Now that Greg is out of the way. So, there are a few notable Matoran, the first being Holly, who is a Kolhi champion and becomes the chronicler after Takua, actually.
What is Kolhi?
Kolhi is the sport that is most common on Mata Nui. It's played with sticks and balls, and you try to like throw. It's kind of like a weird mix between. It's kind of like lacrosse and soccer mixed together. How when they play it, it looks more like Quidditch from Harry Potter than it does anything else. But none of the rules are similar at all. The other important Matoran is Maku, who is a boat racer, Kolhi champion, and right hand of Nokama. And Maku was also part of the Chronicler's Company, which is a group of Matoran that went with the Chronicler to defend Kinanui when the Toa went down to fight Makuta. Because when the Toa went down to fight Makuta, Rahi reinforcements were coming on their way. So the Chronicler's Company were a group of Matoran along with Takua that fought them off until the Toa managed to defeat Makuta the first time. Pretty big thing to have. Next is Matoran, the Toa of Air. What do you think their trait is?
Air resistance.
Increased drag.
Probably like lightness or agility.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Dexterity, something along those lines.
Yeah, good. They have heightened ability and reflexes, as well as stealth, but they're bad on flat ground. Of their notable Matoran, they have Kongu, who is head of the Gugo Bird Force, right hand of Matau, and will be important later.
Much like Hafu.
Confirmed.
Yeah, confirmed important later, unlike Jalar. So, Matoran of Stone. What do you think theirs is?
Kicking boulders.
I feel like it's probably something like strength, like increased strength.
Yeah, it's increased strength. They're the strongest of the Matoran. So they're the ones that can just throw boulders through sheer strength. They have a few notable Matoran. The first one being Akmu, who is a slimy little weasel. He sold infected Kolhi balls, and since Kolhi's the most played sport on Mata Nui, almost all of Po Koro got affected by them. And he was working with Makuta at the time to spread this infection. And when the Turaga found out, he just darted and left Po Koro for like years. After that, we have Hafu, who is he was the one we talked about earlier, right?
Hafu.
So he's a carver, and the statues that he brought down to stop the Borak from getting into Po Koro were the statues that he had carved himself.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, dang, he had to sacrifice everything, and it still wasn't enough. He was also part of the Chronicler's company. Hafu, the goat. One of many goats. It's like a whole herd of them.
Will Hafu be important later?
Hafu will never be important again.
No!
That is also confirmed.
Yeah. So, next is Hyuki. He is the best Kolhi player ever, like straight up. He is captain of the Po Koro Guard. That's how he stays so athletic and fit for Kolhi. He's the right hand to Onua, and he's close friends with Maku, who is the God Matoran, Kolhi champion.
Just to clarify, that is Turaga Onua, not
Yes.
Toa Onua.
Turaga Onua, who is spelled differently from Toa Onua. Turaga Onua, the Turaga of stone. Yeah, Turaga Onua is the Turaga of stone. Toa Onua is the Toa of earth. Don't know why they named them that. Next, we move on to Earth Toa, the Onu Matoran. What do you think theirs is?
Increased vision, like night vision.
I feel like it might be like toughness.
They get minor strength, not as much as a Po Matoran, but more than the average, and night vision, although they have bad vision in daylight. That is what their traits are, and they have a few notable Matoran as well. They have Nuparu, who is a brilliant inventor. He's the one that made the Boxor. When he was trapped in a cave with two other Matoran and a dead Borak, so he literally made the Boxor in a cave with a box of scraps out of just a welding torch. I don't know how, but he did. Also...
And that's how he earned the nickname Tony Stark.
Nuparu made this in a cave with a box of scrap.
Makuta to the Balrog, like.
And Thomas, I think that's a new meme that you're.
Oh
gonna
yeah,
have to
that's
make.
what I was thinking about that last night. Like, oh, a box of cave in a cave with a box of scraps. So the other important Onu Matoran is Onepu. He's captain of the Usselry, which is the crab fighting force of Onu Koro, and he's also a professional Ussel racer, winning 5 times in a row. He's the 5-year champion, which is very impressive in my opinion. Racing Ussel crabs is difficult. I would know. I'm an Ussel crab. He's also the right hand to Wanua and part of the Chronicler's company. Po Matoran are next, Matoran of ice. What do you think their power is? I may have mentioned it before.
Cold resistance.
Oh, you're so clever.
Dang, I was gonna say slipperiness.
Slippery resistance. Notable ice Matoran include Matoro, who is the right-hand man of Nuju, and also his interpreter. Because Turaga Nuju does not speak in normal words that people can understand. He speaks in an obscure, like Rahi language, and only Matoro knows how to speak it and interpret it. So he's actually privy to a lot of secrets that the Turaga tell, because he has to be at all their meetings for anyone to figure out what the heck Nuju is saying. So he's very good at keeping secrets.
Question about that. Why do you... Maybe we'll talk about this when we get into the Turaga, but do we know why Nuju speaks in like that Rahi language? Because obviously he knows how to speak normally.
Because he's just a jerk. Like, he just does it to be obtuse and weird.
He has a heart of ice, probably literally. So
Yeah. I think it's a carryover from his Hortica days, because he's like, oh, I really like being half Rahi. That's the only thing they ever give.
How do you really feel, Tom?
Oh, I love Nuju. He's my favorite character. Anyway, the other notable Ko-Matoran is Kopeki, who's an amazing ice carver, part of the Chronicler's company, and the snowball sling champion of Kokoro. No one else from the other Koros entered because no one could find Kokoro. So, there are also Matoran of other elements.
Wait, real quick. Speaking of no one being able to find Kokoro, why didn't they just take the cable car?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. There is a cable car that goes from like part of Mount Aihu all the way down to the battlements of Ta-Koro that you can just take up and down.
Of course.
Yeah. And Kopeki is part of the guard that guards that cable car.
But he's not part of the Sanctum Guard. He's just part of the guard.
Yeah. There are two noted members of the Sanctum Guard. When I was doing research, like, oh, the Sanctum Guard, what are the members? There's two of them. Both have no feats to their name. It's just like they're part of the Sanctum Guard. It's like, wow.
That's the only feat a Matoran could possibly want.
Matoran can either be Matoro or part of the Sanctum Guard. It's like the path meme. So, there are 8 other elements besides the basic 6 that show up most frequently in the Matoran universe. And these elements, the first one is lightning. They are called Matoran. And what do you think their elemental power is?
Electricity resistance.
Yeah, something along those lines.
You're not going to believe this. It's lightning resistance.
Wow.
Yeah. So for all of these other elements, there's no like singular Matoran that need to be pointed out. It'll just be basically what there are and any interesting aspects about their tribe. So an interesting thing about the Matoran is that, like Matoran, they are all female. The next type of Matoran are Matoran, or Matoran of magnetism. What do you think their power is?
Being magnetic.
What do you think,
I have no clue. Like, I don't know what would go along with it.
Like, I wonder if, like, it has something to do with, like, compasses. You know, like, polarity.
Or their enhanced navigational skills.
Yeah. So when the Bionicle community was voting on what specific traits each Matoran of the additional elements would have, this was one of the most contested on what it should be, matched only by Matoran of gravity, who we'll get to. But what it ended up being the canon power of the Matoran was they have an internal compass / sense of direction. So Jacob, you were right. You get a prize. Yep.
Wait, what do I get?
You get to get away from Kokoro for a day.
Dang it. I'm going to Lee Koro. We're going to do very much tree speak.
No. Next, we have the Su Matoran. They are the Matoran of plasma. They can also be called the Mary Sue Matoran. I say that because guess what their elemental power is? Matoran of plasma, keep in mind.
Melting things?
No. They have heat resistance that is better than that of Ta Matoran. And they get special eyelids that they can use to shield out extreme light.
Oh, well, that explains the eyelid thing.
But those are special extra eyelids.
I still hate that.
Yeah. I mean, they blink in the movies.
Yeah, well, are the movies really a great
That's a good point. The movies aren't accurate to anything at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're just straight upgrades to Ta Matoran. Like, there's nothing a Ta Matoran can do that a Su Matoran can't do better.
Yeah, well, what about stay alive and also be relevant?
You got him. So, the next is the Ba Matoran, or the Matoran of gravity. Guess what theirs is?
Well, you said this one was contentious as well, so...
Like, controlling their buoyancy somehow? Possibly.
See, I don't think of this completely differently. They would be, like, good at... they would have, like, natural leadership abilities.
Gravitas.
Because they have, like, gravitas, right? There's a weight to them.
That's the Matoran of charisma, Sam. Yeah. The other classical element.
And their Toa, Riz.
Toa of Riz. That's Pohatu. Riz and boulders. Anyway, they have resistance to gravity. So, like, where normal people's internal organs and stuff would be crushed by high gravitational pressure, they can just say no. I resist that.
So they would probably also be really good at, like, diving and going way deep down in the water.
Presumably, wherever pressure is high, they would have resistance to it.
Buddies share oxygen with a Gamatorn.
Love isn't canon, Jacob. How many times do I have to tell you this? Anyway, next we move on to the D Matoran, who are the Matoran of sonics. Guess what their power is?
Probably enhanced hearing.
Sonic resistance.
They're Shadow the Hedgehog. Anyway, great hearing is indeed their ability. Congratulations, Jacob.
Yes, I am on a roll.
Not
I
only
swear
do you
I'm not
get
even
out of
cheating.
Kokoro for a day, you get to meet Onua.
Yes.
Samuel, you better step it up. You're losing.
I'm okay.
Next, we have Bow Matoran, who are the Matoran of plant life. Guess what their power is?
A green thumb.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like cultivation ability.
That's what you'd think. You're wrong. They just know attributes about plants, like inherently.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
their elemental
something.
power is knowing attributes of plants. The
And
Bionicle team has no clue what an element is.
This is why Toa and Matoran of plant life are just. No one knows what to do with them.
Toa of plant life are based because they can make plants out of thin air.
That's not.
Is there
completely
actually a
true.
toe of plant life that's confirmed?
They can just make plant life. Toa of plant life can just make plant life. Like just spawn it out of nothingness. What? Doesn't make any sense.
Beautify Takoro. They just like the toe of plant life just goes around fixing all the burned trees.
They can do that. Like they're busted out the wazoo. I like.
Sounds
Toa
like a
plant
great
life.
campaign. Like basis.
Make Mata Nui green again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so next we move on to the Fey Matoran, who are the Matoran of iron. What do you think theirs is?
Improved smithing skills.
I feel like a little confused because I feel like the magnetism one has some crossover.
Yeah, because they never cross over elements before. Stone and earth, separate things. Ice and water, completely different. Fire plasma, couldn't be more dissimilar. There we go. I was going to say unsimilar. Well, that's not true. No, they have physical endurance. We'll get to the more interesting lore thing about them when we get to the Chronicler's Corner, so stay tuned for that. Next, and finally, we have the Sea Matoran, which is CE Matoran. They are the Matoran of psionics, another classical element. What do you think theirs is?
I don't know.
Resistance to mind reading.
Yeah, mind control. Yeah.
Yep. So they're
That's where I
pretty
was
much
gonna go.
impossible to have their minds read or to be contacted with telepathy or mind controlled.
So what is Samuel? Win,
Yeah, I was
since
gonna
you got
say,
it
do
right?
I go get to meet Onua now?
He also said
You can meet Pohatu. He's available.
he also said the right thing about the Matoran as well.
What was Faye? I don't remember.
I am
that.
physically endurant.
No,
Did
I
you?
didn't. I said that they were good at smithing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What are you talking about?
You know, I'll get hang out with Pohatu.
Yeah,
we get
Pohatu's
to
cool.
kick some rocks.
Yeah,
Boulders.
but you have to have Matau with you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Because he didn't get 2 questions right.
Yep.
Taraga Matau.
Just tree speaking all over the place.
So, we will now move on to the Chronicler's Corner, because there are a lot of interesting things that go deep into the lore about Matoran in general. You are now entering the Chronicler's Corner. The following content may not be appropriate for viewers unaware or unacquainted with the wider Bionicle lore, as major plot points and reveals will be spoiled. If you wish to avoid this section, skip to this time in the podcast.
39 minutes, 59 seconds.
Viewer discretion is advised. So, the first being that there are Matoran of light and Matoran of shadow. So, guess what Matoran of light can do?
Emit light. Turn into lightning bolts.
Oh,
No.
I know. Turn into Bullrock.
Hey, no spoilers in the spoiler section. But that's not an elemental power they have. That's purely biological. I'm not joking. Don't ask me how. Biology in Bionicle makes no sense. Because it'll be like, oh, this guy evolved. And it's like, it's just a guy that existed for a long time. Like, they don't even have DNA. So it's not like their DNA can mutate to turn them into different things. They just, one day, you're a frog or something. It's a dangerous life in the Matoran universe. Anyway, light Matoran were called Av Matoran. They were the first type of Matoran ever made. So while the Great Spirit Robot was being constructed, the Great Beings are like, okay, we'll make some light Matoran, because since there was no internal lighting installed yet, they're like, they can just make their own light. because, the Great Beings are real geniuses. They're also given greater elemental control than other Matoran types, so they're able to shoot light and able to change the color of their armor at will, because that is simply a refraction of light.
So I was partially right. They do make light. They glow.
Yep, I glow. Sky High reference number 2. Oh, I also forgot to say, Sea Matoran are also all female, and we'll get more into that later. They're made with, the elemental abilities because they couldn't do it. And Takua is actually a Av Matoran, so he's a Matoran of light, and he was the first Matoran ever made. Like, the Great Beings are like, what should we do? And they make Takua, and it's like, perfect, first try. Nice job. Yep. Then they're like, okay, now we'll make the Krana. Massive failure. So, the interesting fact about the Sea Matoran all being female was that the first Sea Matoran was male, but then he was too unhinged and stable when he became a Toa. And they're like, okay, you're all women from now on.
Wait, too unhinged and unstable?
Yeah. So he's like, can't trust you guys with psionic powers. So it's just a really bizarre choice. Anyway, the other type of Matoran are the Kra Matoran, which are Shadow Matoran, and they don't occur naturally at all. They have to be created either by a Matoran like totally becoming evil and getting their entire dark light balance to the dark side, or they can have like shadow leeches latch onto them and physically drain all the light out of a Matoran. If they do that, they essentially become the counterparts to Light Matoran, and they can shoot shadow bolts, although they can't change the color of their armor. So, downgrade in my opinion. And of course, they can be male or female because they can be created from any type of Matoran. They're the most inclusive Matoran type, even though Av Matoran can also be male or female, but they can't change between. Anyway.
Wait, so you said they're called Kra Matoran? Like K-R-A?
K-R-A.
Yeah,
Okay, so like
Krakon.
Krana.
Yeah, like Krana
Krata.
or Krata, Krakon.
Yeah. So
Which
the
is the Mask of
Krakon
Shadows.
is the name of Makuta's Mask of Shadows.
So,
And then the Av comes from the Avoki, which is the Mask of Light.
that makes sense. I was going to ask if they have like consistent basis in something.
Yeah. So a lot of them have, like, some have cool inspirations for their prefix, some don't. Like Fey Matoran, obviously the elemental symbol of iron. Bo Matoran, because, like, Boda Magna, right? It's just kind of the prefix for that. But then it's like Vo Matoran.
Well, Vomatoran comes from... there was a canceled purple Toa of Lightning. That was a concept art. And its name started with VO. I forget what it was, though.
I did not know that.
Yep.
It's pretty cool. Anyway, so Matoran also, the reason they vary so differently in size is because a few different factors. So the standard Matoran is the Mata Nui size Matoran. That's the 4 feet, 5 inches tall. That's just how the standard Matoran is created. Mata Nui Matoran are smaller than average because when they were in the canisters from Mata Nui, they were in there long enough that they shrunk and they got like downgraded, essentially. Kind of like how the Toa lost all their organic matter when they were in the pods and their memories. So on Voya Nui, the Matoran are smaller because they were a specific group of Matoran that were sent to Karzani to be repaired. He tried to repair them, but because he's crazy and bad at his job, he made them smaller and weaker. So he just gave them weapons and like, get out of here. So that's why they're smaller. Kardanui Matoran, who are all Av Matoran, are bigger than normal Matoran because since Kardanui is literally just a big old energy thing, they grew up healthier and stronger than the other Matoran because they're just, it's like getting force-fed like 20 grams of protein every second. So Matoran can also be physically rebuilt to be bigger and stronger. So just like how you'd rebuild them in an actual mock set, you can do that in lore. And that's what the Mata Nui Matoran do after the Borak Call are defeated. All the Mata Nui Matoran get rebuilt to be stronger and more like their Metru selves. So
That's cool.
yeah, I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that before doing research for this. Now, an interesting fact about Akmu is that he didn't only betray everyone on Mata Nui. In Metru Nui, he was also a weasel little traitor who betrayed the Toa and tried to get them all killed to Makuta and the Morkbazak. And later on, he repented, right? He came back to Pokoro. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, And he actually did get, like, reformed and redeemed. But Makuta Ikarax was going to corrupt him with a shadow leech, and as he was doing so, Takanuva just happened to be walking by. So that's why Takanuva got shadow leeched. It's because of stupid Akmu just existing and being a jerkwad like 1,000 years earlier. Without that, we would have had a cool, normal Toa of late. So Akmu's the worst. Kill on sight.
I want to make just a quick addition and a brief correction. So it wasn't actually a canceled set. It was a Photoshop that someone did in 2002. But his name was Toa Barraki, and he was male. So this was all before these Matoran were officially canonized. But yeah, so the Vo comes from Voriki.
Interesting.
Yep.
Moving on to other facts. Jalar, the Matoran, wears Toa-Likon's How, his mask of shielding, which Vakama carried from Mata Nui all the way to Mata Nui. And on the journey, Jalar lost his mask and was broken. So he just gave him Likon's How, which I think is pretty cool. The Matoran, when they were being made, they were based off the Agori, but were made to be like better and stronger and harder workers. Which, yeah, they are. Matoran are like fantastic workers. They will literally work on something for 100,000 years and be totally fine. They can also die of old age, but no canonical death has ever happened. Like, they're 100,000 years in, no signs of aging at all. So if they do have lifespans, it's got to be like the millions of years. Like, take Takua. He's literally the first Matoran ever made. Young, spry, youthful. Like, Matoran are going to live forever.
And like, despite like massive mental, emotional, and physical trauma also, which is, so they're not only just physically resistant, they're also like incredibly mentally resistant as well.
Yeah. Sea Matoran especially.
Although to be fair, they did all have their memories wiped
That
after moving from Mata Nui, so...
That was just the Mata Nui Matoran, and I was going to get more into the different types of Matoran and how they'd handle stuff later. But originally, this is the most interesting and deepest fact I know about the Matoran. They were actually just fairly complex AI, and they had no life or sapience when they were first created. So like the original Matoran Takua, just like more similar to the Borak Va than they were now. But the great being who inhabited Velika's body from the Matoran resistance, he was watching over the entire Matoran universe as it was beginning, right? And he was the one that caused all of the Matoran to gain sapience. And so they started developing like culture and experience and like deep emotional bonds. No one knows how he did this or why he did this. He just did. So he's actually the origin of all of the problems in the Matoran universe, essentially. So it's blame it on Velika. So those are pretty much all the basic facts about just how Matoran function, how they're divided, how they work. I want to go over, Matoran are like incredibly resilient. They're made to be the perfect workers, right? But they also can be so much more than that. Like on Mata Nui, they play sports, they invent sports, they get good at sports. They can do arts, crafts, all sorts of things. And they're also not afraid to fight. Because the Toa were made explicitly to protect Matoran, and the Turaga were made to guide Matoran. But that doesn't mean Matoran don't have the capability to do either of those things. So like on Voyanui, the Matoran resistance, they're perfectly happy being independent, and they actually kind of preferred that in a lot of ways, right? So they're able to adapt to nearly any situation they find themselves in. I mean, like, even if you just think about the Mata Nui Matoran, they went to an entirely different island that's outside of the universe, and they're just like, okay, we'll make cool villages and stuff. So that's one thing I really appreciate about the Matoran. In Bionicle, they take the time to make them their own characters and not just helpless, oh, save me, right?
Samuel, what'd you learn?
Oh, way too much to recap. But I think it's interesting. I didn't know that there were more than the original 6 elements. I had no clue that I knew of the other elements because of the Borak call, but I didn't know that those extended to the Matoran species. So that's pretty cool.
It's also funny because Borak call don't perfectly translate to those others. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's bizarre. Because, like, the Borak have many of the elemental powers, but, like, there's no Matoran of vacuum. Like, that's just not a power that the Matoran are affiliated with. So, but it is interesting that the call were kind of like an inspiration for what the fans decided to vote into canon as Matoran elements. So, With that, we shall move on to the set/technical side of the Matoran sets.
You are now entering the set and technical portion of the podcast. This is where we examine the real-world production and set design of the LEGO Bionicle toy line. Okay, so there is quite a bit to be said about Matoran, actually. And primarily, this is going to start with the fact that there were really two main sort of waves of Matoran, I guess. So there's one in 2001 and there's one in 2003. So the 2001 wave, which were set numbers 1388 through 1393, so 6 of them. These were the Matoran, right? So in 2001, a set of 6 Matoran was released alongside the Toa and Turaga and Rahi of that wave. But rather than having a traditional set release, these sets came in McDonald's Happy Meals. Why they decided to do this, truly a mystery, but they did, and that's just how it goes. But it's so strange because they have actual part numbers. They are like actual Lego sets by all accounts. Each one of them had 8 parts, and they even included some exclusive parts that you will never find in any other Bionicle sets. So each Matoran included 2 feet, a torso, one bendable arm that had sort of a hand on it, I suppose you could say, and the other arm had like a more of a claw. They were both supposed to be hands, but they looked a little bit different. Each set included a specialized head part and a mask borrowed from either the Toa or Turaga of the 2001 wave. The disc throwing arm could be pulled back and released to throw the included disc. This function actually works surprisingly well, and is actually super fun to do. It's not very accurate though. It's pretty hard to aim properly. Yeah, so they had that feature, and I would have thought, I mean, these are old now. These are 24 years old at this point. And I would have thought the plastic would have degraded over time, like for the throwing arm, but they really haven't. I mean, they still work great and they look great, you know, and this is again for what is essentially a McDonald's toy. So,
I mean, you mean literally a McDonald's toy.
Literally a McDonald's toy, you know, clearly up to traditional Lego standards though. So pretty cool. There were 6 possible Matoran that you could receive in one of your Happy Meal packs. So they were Huki, who was spelled Huki at the time, but would later become the Huki that we know, Hewkii. They did this to a lot of the Matoran in this first wave. They changed the names later on.
Well, 3 of the Matoran, Huki, Maku, Jaller, all had their names changed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's an explicit part of the lore that I'll cover later.
Yeah. So Huki was dark orange and tan. He was a Matoran, and he included a dark orange Kakama, and the dark orange Kakama was actually exclusive to this set at the time. Onepu was the next Matoran. He was the Onu Matoran. He was purple and black and included a purple Pikari. And this purple color is actually a little bit different from the existing Lego purple that we have now. According to Bricklink, this is just called purple, and the purple that we have now is called dark purple. So kind of interesting. But I actually really like this color. It's retired now. Don't have it anymore, which is very sad.
Why do they retire colors?
That is a whole conversation we can get into in another time.
Okay.
But it's interesting. It's very interesting. So then there's Maku, which was spelled Maku and later changed to Macku.
Huge
Maku,
change in the name.
Yeah, massive difference. Maku was medium blue, and she was a Gamatoran. She included a blue Huna, which was interesting because the Huna was Turaga Vakama's mask. And so she didn't even have the Turaga mask that corresponded with her element for some reason. I'm not totally sure why. But she was the only one that did not have the mask that corresponded to their elemental Toa, right? So like if it went with the trend, Maku would have had Golly's mask, right? The cow, but she didn't. So then there was Jala, who later became Jowler. He was red and yellow. He was a Matoran, and he included a yellow How. Kangu is the next one, and actually including all of the 2002 and 2003 sets, he's the only Matoran that we see up to that point. So up until 2004.
Because nobody likes Matoran.
Exactly. Why do you think Greg had the entire village destroyed?
So Kangu was lime green and dark turquoise, and he included a dark turquoise Miru, which was very cool. And then there was Matoro, who's the Komatoran. His colors were sand blue and white, and he had a sand blue Akaku, which is the Kopaka's mask. Each Matoran set also had a black disc with the printing of their Toa's masks on them. So they all had the same mask that the Matoran had, except for Maku, who had the cow on the disc.
That's strange.
Very weird.
Bizarre choices all around. All around.
And speaking of bizarre choices, in 2002, we got our one and only Matoran in our favorite set, 8556 Boxor. This set is just so weird for so many reasons. I'm not even talking about the set itself. I'm just going to talk about the Matoran that it came with. Okay. So Nuperu appears in the Boxor set. We've talked about Nuperu. Nuperu's the goat. He had the same construction style as the Mictoran, except for instead of having one non-throwing arm, he had two throwing arms. But the weird part is the throwing arms aren't designed to be on both arms. So one of them had to be upside down. And it looks super dumb. I don't know why they did that. Like, honestly, they could have given him two non-throwing arms, which are designed to be able to go either way. But no, they had to give him two throwing arms and have one be upside down. I don't know why. Also, he's the only Matoran of this style that has three colors. So he is black, dark gray, and orange. And what's also super weird about this is he's an Onu Matoran, but orange is never used for Onu for Toa of Earth ever again. Later, it's used for Toa of Stone and Matoran of Stone, but it's never used in conjunction with Earth ever again. So this is the only like Earth related element Bionicle set that you'll ever see that's orange.
They're like, any Matoran who would build a vehicle out of the desecrated corpse of their enemy deserves three colors.
Yeah. I mean, Nuper is the goat.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be too mad about it, but it's just so like strange choices, just very strange choices.
It's like, did they intentionally think about this, or are they just like, push it through?
And yeah, because it's funny because the Earth Toa are supposed to have purple as like their secondary color scheme, and that carries over through basically the whole rest of Bionicle. Okay, so then in 2003 we got our next actual set of 6 Matoran. If you thought the first wave was strange choices, get ready, because this is just weird. So these were $4 sets that came out alongside the Toa and the Borak Call. They each had 25 parts, so similar to the Mictoran, they all had the same number. They all came with a Kolhi stick and a ball that could attach sort of into the bottom of the stick. There was like a holder for it, but it was also removable. You could knock it around. The play feature on these was the Matoran had like a gear on the back that you could turn, and it would allow you to sort of like move the Kolhi stick. You could like hit the ball with it, kind of the idea. It had like a little hammer thing that you would use.
Yeah, because you could like play like crochet and hit it with the hammer, or like
croquet?
Croquet. Play it like crochet.
You might be able to crochet with it. I don't know.
When you're crocheting with cement,
it would probably be very hard.
Forget I said anything. Okay, I'll just never say anything again.
But yeah, you could do sort of like a croquet style game with it. Yeah. So the 6 Matoran that came in this set were Kopiki. I didn't look up his name. I should have done that.
Kopeki, I was calling him. I have no clue what he's called, actually.
You should look that up. Kopeki.
Kopek is what he's called. Kopek.
He was white and dark gray, and he included a gray Taraga version of the Matatu. That gray Matatu was exclusive to that set at the time. So then there was Matoro, who was another Co-Matoran. So again, weird choices. There were only 6 of these, and 2 of them are Co-Matoran, and 2 of them are Ga-Matoran. So Matoro was white and sand blue, which is the same as his 2001 color scheme, and he had the same mask. So he had a sand blue Akaku. Next up, we have Hyuki, who has the updated name with the W and the 2 eyes. He was a Pomatoran, tan and dark orange, which is the same as his 2001 version, and similarly featured a dark orange Kakama, just like his 2001 version. But of course, he had the updated gear mechanism and the staff and all that. Then there was Holly, who was a Ga-Matoran with blue and dark blue color scheme, which dark blue is a relatively new color at this time. And she had the missing Toa mask. So she had Golly's Cow annoyingly in the same color. So we didn't get a new color for the Cow, which whatever, but sad.
And speaking of that, we want to make sure everyone has a holly jolly Christmas. A holly jalla Christmas.
Anyways, next up we have my personal favorite, Hafu. Hafu was an Onu Matoran with a black and tan color scheme, and he had the Taraga version of the Ruru.
Isn't Hafu a Pomatoran?
Yes, what did I say?
Did Onu Matoran? Like,
Oops.
I'm pretty sure he defended Pokoro.
I'm sorry. He is a Pomatoran. You are absolutely correct. So they did 2 Komatoran, 2 Pomatoran, and 2 Ga-Matoran. We didn't get any Ta-Matoran, any Onu Matoran.
Definitely no Lima.
Definitely no Lima Matoran. You know why? Because those guys just suck, I guess. I don't know.
Get him out of here.
Lima Matoran hate goes hard, I guess. All right. So yeah, so Hafu, sorry, correction. Hafu is a Pomatoran. So then the last one was Maku, who again had the updated spelling with the CK, and is yet another Ga-Matoran. And Maku has the same medium blue and blue color scheme as she had in 2001, and has the same mask, the blue Huna. So the Matoran of the 2003 wave, you could get them in a variety of ways. So they came in individual packs for $4. You could get them all together in a 6-pack a little bit more rarely. They also came in 2 packs. So each of the sets of 2. So the Ko-Matoran, the Ga-Matoran, and the Po-Matoran. And they came packaged with a Kanohi Avoki, the Mask of Life. Mask of Light. And that was a promotion for the movie. And then they also came in as a cross-packaging promotion with Kabaya Sweets, which was a Japanese company and only in Japan. But they had special packaging for that specifically.
Wait, so they came packaged with the sweets?
They came packaged with the sweets, with the candy.
Huh.
Yeah.
And this would not selling Matoran with food.
Well, it's weird too.
I was saying they like selling them to Japan.
This would not be the first time that Lego would partner with Kabaya, and you would get actually exclusive sets or exclusive packaging that you could only get with that. So they did that actually with Rock Raiders also. So there are exclusive Rock Raiders sets that you can only get with the Kabaya packs and with Adventurers.
Was the Borak Mixer one of those Kabaya sets, or was that a completely unique thing to
I think
Japan,
it was
regardless?
I think it was a unique thing that was just in Japan. I need to look more into that, but I know it was just Japanese. But I don't think it had anything to do with the Kabaya packs. It's very strange, but I guess it worked. And then the last thing in 2003 is there were 2 sets that were bigger that we've already talked about in the Rahi wave, but it was Jowler and Guko set 8594 and Takua and Puku, which was 8595. And these sets each came with a Matoran, obviously. This is the 2 missing Ta Matoran. So Jowler came with the same color scheme that we saw in his 2001 appearance, so red and yellow. Same mask, the yellow Hao. And then Takua is the new character, and he had a red and blue and medium blue color scheme, and he had a medium blue Pakari. What's interesting is we never see blue used as an accent color again for anything fire related in Bionicle.
This was actually pretty intentional, maybe
I
on their
think
part,
so, yeah.
because he was supposed to be different and set apart from the rest of the Matoran.
Yeah, I think you can definitely explain it away that way for sure. Explain the orange mask on Nupru though, like.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So is Nupru destined to be the Toe of Light?
I mean, he was destined to be something. Maybe I don't know. Maybe
We're out of the spoiler section. I'll retract everything.
Anyway, so that's basically the sets. Any questions about that?
Yeah, actually, well, not really a question, but more of a comment. Like you were talking about, it's weird that the Matoran came with Happy Meals, and I don't think it's really that weird based off of like what we've discussed, how Lego went about marketing the Bionicle. It was just they put it everywhere, and so it's like, hey, kids are gonna buy Happy Meals, kids are gonna get these toys, and they're gonna say, what is this? This is kind of cool. I want to know more about that. And so it's actually super smart. I think if that was their tactic, was to just get it everywhere, do it in every form of media that they could get their hands on, then it's like, yeah, why not try to make a deal with McDonald's?
Yeah. I think what's sad though is that it's just so frustrating that they did Bionicle Happy Meal toys again for almost every wave after this. But they were never actually Bionicle compatible. They were like action figure versions of the Bionicle sets, which is just super frustrating. They're so ugly.
I know, it's bizarre. It's like, why? I feel like you take the same amount of resources to make it as a normal Bionicle than
at least put a good guy in there or something. Come on, man.
That's Good Guy TM, the registered property of Lego.
Not to be confused with Good Guy, the other registered property of Lego.
I was talking Good Guy, the concept that kind of exists as a guy who is good.
Anyways, any other questions?
No, you explained it so beautifully. I was enraptured the whole time.
All right.
We're related, by the way.
Not.
That's what I was going to say. Related how?
By marriage.
Related, more like relations, am I right?
What? Love isn't canon, love isn't canon, love isn't canon.
All right, let's talk about the community notes, Thomas.
Community notes.
You are now entering the community portion of the podcast. In this section, we showcase some of our favorite creations from talented and passionate members of the Bionicle fandom.
Okay, so Brandon Builds on Reddit or Instagram has Matoran rebuilds. For Takua specifically, I think it looks absolutely sick. It's a very sleek and incorporates a lot of system pieces into its design that gives it, like, I don't know, an elegance and flair that I appreciate. What do you guys think?
I really do like this because it gives the Matoran a little bit more of a like presence. They're taller. They're a little bit more how you would imagine a Matoran like as a worker. They're not quite so stout and just useless looking. They look like they could actually build something this way.
Yeah, like they could hold tools or like be able to maneuver towards something rather than waddling and then throwing awkwardly.
I think it's worth noting too that like he uses a hand from the later Bionicle series to like create the hip section, and that's pretty smart just on a technical level.
Yeah, I really like that.
I personally like my Matoran as small as possible, so I think this looks really cool. It's not a Matoran to me.
Next, we move on to John Pierce on the TTV message boards, who also has a Matoran redesign. This one kind of uses more similar pieces to the original wave of Bionicle, so a lot more like, what do you call that? Like, no.
Porous.
Yeah, it's like more porous. It looks more like the pure Technic design of the early Bionicle sets, but they still have like that stout and like limber mobility that we were kind of praising before. These look like Matoran that could fit more realistically as a rebuild of the original wave and still get things done.
I don't know. If my Matoran are as tall or taller than my Toa, no, I'm not sure how much I can get behind that. I do think they look cool though.
Jacob wants to keep the Matoran down.
Now we're talking.
So you walk us through these, Jacob.
I wish I had the attribution for these, but this is a Balta mock that I found. So Balta is one of the Matoran from Mata Nui, and I just really like this design. I feel like it keeps the overall shape of the Matoran while also like modernizing it and updating it in a really good way. Also, it uses a Chima Speedors piece unprinted as its body, which is just incredibly brilliant, nice parts.
I was wondering what that piece was because I'm like, I've never seen anything like that before. But that is a fantastic design, especially to get Balta's like kind of hunch down in there.
I honestly think it's genius.
Okay, and then what the heck is this?
So this is
looks a lot like love, Jacob. This better not be what I'm seeing.
I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be like a wedding ceremony. I just really think the vibes are cool. I love how they did the trees, and I actually love
how they did the trees?
I non-canon how they did the trees. And I really like the Matoran design in this one. There's another angle that I didn't send you, but I feel like again they maintain that feel of the original Matoran while not going too far into like, you know, the tall, overly built.
Yeah, these are much more similar in stature to the original Matoran.
Actually, I would say these probably only stand maybe an inch taller.
Also, I really like the rock shape axe for the water. Like, that is a very cool effect. So, props to this guy.
And the like the head in the background is so cool.
Mm-hmm. Also, the Turaga shoulder pads look so natural for like a ceremonial garb. Super cool.
I assume that's supposed to be Vekama, but I'm not totally sure.
It is Vekama. That's Vekama's mask and Vekama's color scheme. Vekama's fire staff.
But besides that,
it could be anyone really. It's probably Maku wearing the Huna in disguise.
You never know these days.
Yep. So, are there any final closing thoughts?
I like Matoran. They're weird, and sometimes Lego has no clue what to do with them. But they just add such a they just make the whole story feel so much more rounded out, you know?
Well, I like them as the baseline for what, because they're kind of the human stand-ins, right? The normal humans, where Toa would be superheroes, the Matoran are normal humans. Except they're far different from normal humans, so it puts the entire Bionicle world in kind of like a different frame of reference, right? It's clearly saying, this is not your world, right? This is an entirely fantastical place. But the Matoran have such like a sincerity to them that you still can't help being drawn in. So, for that reason, I think they're actually a very good baseline to have the universe rest on. Because you can empathize with the Matoran on a human level. They're also different enough to be like, okay, I know where I am. I'm in the Bionicle universe distinctly. So, that's what I think. Give your closing thoughts.
I think that Matoran are pretty gosh darn neat. I also think that it's just interesting learning about them and how differently they are, like how different they are from nearly anything else. Like it's very clear that they are supposed to be unique and the building block, right? And so
no pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. So I like that about them. I think it's just fun learning about their history and what they do and why they're important, why they're worth saving for that matter. Actually, it's like, why did the Toa go through the trouble of trying to keep the Matoran safe? And I think that's a fun aspect of the story.
So, with that, we close today's episode of the Barraki Talk Show. Make sure to tune in next time to learn all about the Toa Nuva and their exploits. Thank you, and come again. Have a nice day.
Goodbye.
This brings us to the end of today's podcast. If you enjoyed the discussion, please follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you like to watch instead of listen, you can also find us on YouTube. The Barraki Talk Show is only made possible thanks to viewers like you. Thank you.